Hello and welcome to this DCS video. In this video I'm going to look at the Mig21 once again, and very briefly I'm going to do a takeoff and landing. Now I've done a few landings since the last video yesterday, and the biggest challenge on landing is visibility at touchdown. So you're going to need everything everything in the arsenal of the jet that can slow it down on touchdown, to enable you to do a faster approach than you'd normally be used to doing. Now, with its delta very narrow wings, there's not a whole lot of lift, and so if you drop the speed too much, the angle of attack rises and the visibility from the cockpit is poor. If you remember, Concorde is a similar design, albeit a larger aircraft, and it managed to overcome the problem by dropping the nose out of the way of the pilot so he could see where he was touching down. So with that in mind, let's get into the pit and just go through the few additional controls that I've mapped and set up. Okay, the first one I'm going to look at here is the trim. Trim buttons are working now, however they have to be mapped from the keys, and you can see our trim centering indicator here tells us that we've moved the trim with the back on and off. And however, if I just use my mouse key to try and adjust the trim, no matter what I do, it doesn't have any impact. So the mouse functionality here is not working, so you've got to do it from your mapped keys. Over here we've got two buttons. One button here is for the parachute, and while the parachute button is all very well, given the nature of the simulator and the fact that your head bounces around in the cockpit, it's actually quite hard to put your mouse cursor on that button at the frantic landing stage, touchdown stage. So once again, I'd recommend that this is a mapped key to a HOTAS, or at least somewhere on your keyboard that you can access quickly. In order to detach the parachute, we have a little covered switch here, which should be the opening of which should be part of your finals, or your setup for finals procedure. You can open it there. You can see the button is behind that. On our takeoff, as we saw yesterday, if we taken off as part of the takeoff procedure, we need to open that little switch to allow the gear to be fully retracted after takeoff. And finally, I've mapped, instead of having my my wheel brake mapped to one of my toe brakes, I've now mapped it to a HOTAS key. As it's a single operation, and it's digital, so it's an on-off system. It's best there. They may change this at a later stage, I'm not sure, but for the moment I'm going to leave it like that. And this brake is actually used in conjunction with the rudder pedals to help steer you during the taxi process. So let's take off, do a quick pattern and land. I'm going to hold the brake in, throttle forward, release. And you can see we bounce around a little bit, so be very gentle on the controls. In fact, once you get your rudder aligned, you really shouldn't probably touch any of the other controls until you're airborne. Well, you've got to obviously pull back at the stick. So at about 350 knots we should be able, or 350 kps, we should be able to lift off. There we go. I wouldn't leave it too much longer than that, as you're liable to lose control. Now we're up. We're going to raise our gear and we're going to raise our flaps. Going to do a gentle turn onto downwind. And once we've got our gear up, I'm going to put it back to the neutral position and close the safety switch. And this saves the valuable compressed air, which will be used up if you've got it in the up or down position. Yeah, we're on the downwind. Let's rotate out and pull back on the throttle, because this puppy has a tendency to want to go fast. So we want to keep it at a speed which we can control and allow us to just do a quick pattern and back in. I'm going to extend a little bit more than I would if I was doing a hard overhead, because it just needs a little bit more time to line up, and I'm not familiar enough yet with it to be able to do that. A little bit more training is needed there. So we're at 650. Going to slow down a little bit more. Let's see where we are. We're just rolling off the end of the threshold there in terms of where it is on our port side. And cutting back on our throttle a little bit. Going to start into our flaps. Getting the aircraft set up for our landing. And let's bring the speed back to about 500 and try and maintain it there. Probably gone a little bit further than I needed to. That's not a problem. Okay, we can just see the runway there. We're got a little bit of still to the left of it, so you can offset a little bit more. And I'm going to deploy the gear. So the gear's going to slow us down a bit, so we need to push forward on our throttle. Looks like a good lineup. I'm not sure whether my HOTAS is slightly offset, but I seem to be being pushed to the left, or whether maybe there's wind. I can just I'm just going to land as if there were some wind, crosswind to the left, so I'm going to point a little bit upwind. So we need to be coming in at 400, close to the threshold, then chopping the throttle to bring us down to about 340 for landing. I'm now going to deploy air brakes. 400, pushing on the throttle a little bit and dropping too quickly, pulling up the nose, going to the left a little bit too far. Okay, we're going to just touch down now. Very shaky. Go back onto the runway and parachute. And now wheel brake on and off. And finally we'll drop our parachute. So a little bit shaky, but I'm probably a little bit fast on touchdown, but I think you're better being a little bit fast with this aircraft. The undercarriage is quite strong, and it's capable of taking a little bit of bashing. The benefit of coming in a little bit hard is that you've got more visibility on the threshold. And so you can put it down in the right position. It's certainly difficult to try and take an approach like you would in the A10, in which case you'd be fixing your angle of attack and adjusting your descent rate using the throttle. I'm not sure of a way of doing this effectively in this aircraft. I'm not sure whether a pilot would have done that, but I'm guessing he could maybe lean up in his seat more to see the edge of the runway. I don't know, depends on how well he'd be strapped in. Now, in order to steer the jet when you come to taxi, what you do is you adjust your rudder and then you apply your wheel brake. So you do right rudder and wheel brake, you turn to the right. The problem with this is, as you apply the brake, it makes you stop. So it's kind of a combination of throttle, rudder and wheel brake. Okay, finally I'll throttle back and wheel brake, stop completely. Okay, I hope you learned something from this. Remember, this is still a pre-release stage of this aircraft, so I'm guessing there's some things which are going to be improved before the final release. However, it's still a very fun aircraft to fly and trick around with even at this stage. Thanks for watching.